So, what if I told you that a single word could describe both the perfect, tide-turning moment in history and also the societal gunk that builds up when we let those moments slip by? Well, today we're going to unpack a really fascinating story. It starts with, of all things, a simple bath towel and ends with a challenge for all of us, all centered on one Korean word, tae.
You know, the author of our source material remembers this really deep phrase, not from some ancient philosophy book, but printed right on an Italy towel, which, if you don't know, is this humble, kind of rough washcloth used in Korean bathhouses to scrub yourself clean. The phrase says, everything has its tae. But what tae actually means, well, that's where this whole story really gets interesting.
Okay, so here's the magic. The word tate is a perfect pawn. On the one hand, it means grime, or dirt, literally the stuff you're scrubbing off with that towel. But on the other hand, it means time, a season, or even more poetically, the perfect, opportune moment. So that phrase on the towel is this super clever piece of wordplay. It means everything has its grime, and everything has its moment. Let's dive into that second idea first.
Right, so let's start with tatai as the right moment in time. The author makes a compelling case that seizing a moment like this isn't just about getting lucky. No, it's about a perfect storm, a convergence of cosmic, earthly, and purely human forces all coming together at once.
According to the source, for something truly historic to happen, you need three things to line up perfectly. First up, you've got Chun-Si, or heaven's timing, that tiny window of opportunity that the universe just gives you. Then there's Jiri, which is a deep, expert understanding of the physical world around you, the geography. And finally, in Mun, the incredible, massive scale of human effort and cooperation. When those three click into place, that's when you can make history.
And for the ultimate example of this perfect convergence, the author points to one of the most audacious, high-stakes military gambles of the 20th century, the Incheon landing. You might know it as Operation Chromite. It was the move that completely turned the tide of the Korean War.
First, let's just talk about the geography. The Jiri. The tidal range at Incheon is absolutely insane. It's one of the most extreme on the planet, with a difference of up to 9 meters. That's almost 30 feet. At low tide, the harbor just becomes this giant, impassable mudflat. Trying to land an army there, it sounds pretty much impossible.
And that massive tide brings us to heaven's timing, the Qianxi. Because of those tides, there were only two incredibly short windows each day, lasting only about 2 hours each when the water was actually high enough for the landing boats to make it to shore. You miss that window, and your entire army is literally stuck in the mud. The margin for error was practically zero. And as if all that wasn't enough, the fleet had to run a true gauntlet just to get there. In the days right before the landing, they had to navigate through the choppy waters left behind by not one, but two powerful typhoons, Jane and Kezia. I mean, they were battling nature itself just to get a shot at that impossibly small window of time.
So with treacherous geography and a razor-thin timeline, everything, and I mean everything, came down to the human endeavor, the Inmun, and the scale was just staggering. We're talking about a fleet of 261 warships, 70,000 troops, and the combined forces of 17 different nations, all focused on one single critical objective.
The strategy itself was genius. It was called the hammer and anvil. While the U.S. 8th Army acted as the hammer, pinning the enemy down at the Nakdong River in the south, the UN forces landing at Incheon would become the anvil, way behind enemy lines, completely cutting off their supplies and communication. It was a masterclass in seizing the perfect jite.
So a perfect moment was seized, history was changed, all through this incredible mix of timing, geography, and sheer human will. But here's where the author uses this amazing story to ask a really tough question. What happens when a society starts to miss its moments?
And that brings us right back to the other meaning of tate, remember? The grime, the dirt, the stains. The author uses this definition to pivot from a story of incredible historical success to a really sharp critique of our present day.
Here's the core of the argument. When a nation or a society fails to act at the right time, when it misses those crucial opportunities for reform, for justice, for progress, a kind of societal grime starts to build up. It clogs the system.
And the author's description of this grime is, well, it's pretty blunt. The source says, and I'm quoting directly here, that the system is clogged with the stench of intentional and organized distortion of modern history, and that this has led to a situation where the lives of the people have fallen into misery and values have been inverted.
The text goes on to call the current era a perverse age. The idea is that things have gotten completely topsy-turvy. It's like, as the saying in the text goes, the thief is the one holding the stick, which means the very people who should be held accountable are somehow the ones in charge.
So, if you're faced with all this built-up grime, what do? Well, the author doesn't just point out the problem. They propose a solution, and in doing so, bring this whole story full circle with a really unique and memorable call to action.
Okay, this is a brilliant final bit of wordplay. In Korea, there's a really common children's hand-clapping game that starts with the chant sis sis sis. The author cleverly changes just one letter, turning it into tste tste tste. It sounds almost the same, but the meaning is totally transformed. It becomes a command: scrub, scrub, scrub.
And this is where the two meanings of te come together beautifully one last time. The author's challenge is crystal clear. It's up to the current generation to pick up that metaphorical Italy towel and actively scrub away the societal grime, all the distortions and inverted values, so that we can create a better time, a better moment for the generation that comes after us.
Now, while the source material is obviously focused on a specific national context, its central idea leaves all of us with a pretty powerful question. It kind of forces us to look around and ask, what's the grime that is built up in our own time? And maybe more importantly, what's it going to take for us to start scrubbing?